What's up, everybody? Welcome to another edition of the Total Human Optimization Podcast. Today, we're talking strength, and we have Smitty here all the way from up in upstate, was it New York?
Yeah, Elmira, New York.
Elmira, New York. Patriots destroyed the Texans last night.
I
What
saw
happened?
that. That was
Are
crazy.
you a Patriots fan?
I'm just a fan of the underdog. So whoever's losing at half, I usually go with them and see what happens. But
But a zero on the Texans side? A donut?
yeah, we actually went out. We got invited to see the Texans and Patriots last year, my wife and I, because I was working with the strength conditioning program there. Just giving them some. I was invited out there just because one of the assistant coaches was having a lot of issues with Achilles tears in the league last year. So what I did was I actually put together like this whole protocol for what I believe are some like the really important things you need to worry about when preventing Achilles tears. So I put together the whole protocol, and they were really impressed. So they brought me out. I hung out with them for a whole day, helped train some of their groups. But we actually saw the Patriots and the Texans last year in the stadium. So what really struck me was
game.
yeah, a lot different. But what really struck me is I almost prefer, and I know this is going to go against a lot of train of thought, but I almost prefer watching the game at home because you can see replays.
Yeah, for sure.
You can hear the commentary, and like when you go to the actual stadium, it seems so small.
Yeah.
Like it's not as
It's
big.
a TV production.
Yeah.
Yeah, they have TV timeouts. A lot of people don't realize that. And it just stops everything.
super slow.
It's not very, yeah.
The craziest thing, I was reading a stat the other day. Even though like an NFL broadcast is 3 hours long, the actual play time is 11 minutes.
Yeah.
I don't know if I heard that stat. I'm like, oh my God, that's so true. But like all the commercials and everything else, 3 hours is, just how long the game spans.
It's a television show. That's
Yeah.
what it comes down to. But, to be in that television show, to be an NFL player, you have to have some massive strength.
Absolutely.
You have to, most of the time, unless you're like Edelman, be a gigantic dude.
Yeah.
And this is where you come in. You've helped out a lot of NFL collegiate athletes that are now in the NFL and that can produce this kind of volume as an athlete. That's no easy feat by any means.
Yeah, it's really weird when you start working with high-level athletes that you would think that their movement and their potential for movement is a certain degree, like maybe better than like the average person off the street, but they have the same issues that your mom and pop have, your high school athletes, collegiate athletes, all the movement dysfunctions that you would see at a lower level for that sport, you see at the elite level as well. And, they just have built over the years adaptations that allow them to play their sport at that high level. But a lot of the what we call movement reserve, where they get outside of those movements that they perform on the field, they just don't have. And that's where the potential we see for injury arises when they don't have that movement reserve.
Yeah. So whenever you train these high level athletes, and then obviously I'm sure that's not a all the time thing. You have your regular everyday Joe coming in. How much do you have to tailor the difference? I mean, is it really that big a difference?
Well, what you'll see a lot of common patterns of dysfunction. Vladimir Yanda, who's a physical therapist, he identified these things called his upper and lower cross syndrome. This is something we talk about in our CPPS certification, but these predictable patterns of dysfunction, most people exhibit. Poor rounded shoulders, really tight hips, out of position at the shoulders, out of position with the hips. Those things, lack of core control, those things are very predictable from athlete to athlete. Like if you go in and do the assessment, you'll see a lot of people are weak in the upper back, but very tight in the shoulders. You'll see very weak glutes, but very tight hip flexors. Yanda put a pattern or his syndromes around this where he identified that most people present this way. And if you start with that, when you look at the assessment and you start with, I know this person's going to be weak in the back. When they perform their assessment, they can't reach overhead. You start to begin to build your program. So if I know that they're really weak in the upper back, tight shoulders, and they can't reach overhead, am I going to military press that person? Or if when they bend down and they hinge at the waist, they're low backgrounds, am I going to deadlift that person? So your program kind of gets built directly from the assessment. And the assessment is pretty common. You see some of the same things in patterns from athlete to athlete.
Yeah. So would you say the deadlift, the military press, are those couple of the exercises where you can really identify all these things you're talking about?
Yeah. So basically, when you do your assessment, you're really looking at how they move. So there's things like static assessments where you're just kind of reaching through a movement pattern. So if I ask you right now to reach overhead, am I seeing that your bicep kind of lines up with your ears? Or do I see you arching at your low back?
So it should be next to your ear.
Yeah, it should be next to your ear. And the thing that you want to look for is, are you compensating to get there? Is your low back arching? Are you losing position at your ribs? Do you not have good core control to maintain a neutral position with your torso while you reach overhead? So those types of things, when you're looking at a body weight assessment or static assessment, you begin to see when they move into like their movement assessment. So if I do an arm reach, which is just a regular static assessment, that's going to tell me one piece of the puzzle. But then I have you do a push-up. That's going to tell me another piece of the puzzle where you're actually under load and you're trying to maintain global core stability while you move your arms through a range of motion. So all those things in the assessment really drive if I'm going to do the military press or if I'm going to do the deadlift, or do we need to take a step back, what we call regression? Do I need to regress those loaded movements so that I don't injure them and I bring up their movement reserves? So I want to try to get them better at moving before I start loading them.
For sure. Let me ask you a civilian question, as I'm not an elite athlete by any means, as most people aren't. What is it about the deadlift that is so complicated? I feel like everybody has a problem with it, and most people aren't doing it right, even when they think they're. Like, what's the deal with it?
People just love pulling big weight. Like if you look on Instagram.
But why is the form always bad? Is it just because of everyday culture, the way we sit?
All the
not
above.
A common movement.
All the above. Well, it's a primal movement. Picking something off the ground is a primal movement. But here's the problem. It's a lot different if I tell you to pick up this med ball off the ground, 5-pound med ball, whatever. And then I say, well, I want you to do a 500-pound deadlift. The more intense and complex and the exercise, the more strict you have to be with your position. So what we say with position is, when you're under load, anytime you have a bar in your hand, a bar on your back, anytime you're under load, I want you to maintain position. And what we say that is your head, your spine, and your pelvis are in straight alignment. In addition to that, we use some of our breathing patterns to pull our ribs down, and that's kind of enhancing that neutral position. But whenever we're asking you to load a position or like pick a heavy weight off the floor, keep your back straight. Because whenever you don't, that's when problems arise. Spinal listhesis, bulge discs, everything like that. And it's all driven. One, I'm not going to have you do that. And the deadlift is the prime example. I'm not going to have you do that if you can't progress. Progressively show me that you can maintain position as the intensity increases.
Yeah.
Okay, so if I'm a coach and I see that in my weight room, two things happen. I either coach that or I allowed it to happen. And that is, I saw that quote online and I thought it was so perfect. It's your responsibility to bring these athletes through the progression safely, get them stronger without getting them injured. If I'm doing ego lifts to try to get the results on the board and I'm trying to post online, you're doing your athletes a disservice, and you know what? In the long term, it's going to come back on you. So we call that the mirror effect. So if my athletes are out there training and they're pulling poorly, they're deadlifting bad technique, they're squatting with bad technique, that's a direct reflection of how I coach them or what I allowed to happen in my own weight room. So that's a lesson for all the coaches out there. Young guys are trying to make their way, and they're trying to show off their athletes and the performance of their athletes. Do not sacrifice position. Do not sacrifice form to try to get a number on the board. So deadlift is a prime example. You see when they lose position, a lot of the times it's all about they can't maintain tension in a certain position. So all strength training exercises have two different positions. the start position and the end position. And the goal is, can the athlete maintain tension from the start position to the end position? That's all we're looking at.
Yeah.
And if they can't, then I'm not going to load the pattern. Okay, so the warm-up should allow them to get into the starting position better, and it should allow the right muscles to contract with the right intensity at the end position and throughout that movement pattern. Okay, so that's all we're looking at. So if you see someone deadlifting and their hips shoot up, okay, well, they couldn't maintain position at that bottom, okay? And the body is going to get the work done in the least energy expenditure way possible. And one of the things I've heard, I believe from Kelly Surratt, he said the body will spare the spine and burn the extremities. So you'll see a lot of issues at the hip, a lot of issues at the shoulder, ankles, knees, when position is not maintained and tension is not maintained through ranges of motion. So that's really critical, and that's why, like, anytime we get our athletes on the barbell, it'd be squat, military press, bench press, all those things, they earn the right to get there. Mm-hmm. Day one, I'm not putting them under, with the barbell. I'm seeing, well, can they perform a goblet squat with a kettlebell? Can they hinge with a kettlebell and still maintain position? So we're going to take them from point A to point B slowly, methodically, and through a structured program. And then when they're ready for the barbell, then there's a whole host of other progressions we can go from there. But if an athlete is screwing up with a deadlift or any strength training exercise, it's because they can't maintain position or get into the right position to start, and they can't maintain tension through that range of motion. That's it.
Yeah, so and another thing I see a lot of people do is, and people that don't have trainers or, that work out at home, do their own thing, they like to just get straight into it.
Exactly.
They don't do any proper warm-up or anything. So what kind of warm-ups do you do? I know I follow a lot of Joe D's stuff. Mm-hmm. The board that we have in the On It Academy for the, we change the warm-up every season.
Yeah, I love that.
I don't know if that's designed for some special reason other than just changing it up a little bit. Mm-hmm. But I will say the warm-ups are very long. They take 20, 30 minutes. It's a full range. No matter if you're doing upper body or lower body, you're working everything. So talk a little bit about, getting warmed up before you hit anything and when it talks in terms of mobility and why it's so important to do that before you hit it.
Yeah. So I was going to make a statement on, like, well, the warm-up's blowing me out. Well, if you have a good comprehensive full body warm-up, it requires a certain level of work capacity or conditioning. And if you're getting fatigued during that warm-up, that's telling you something about your overall work capacity. So you need to increase that. So lots more sled dragging and integrating warm-ups and stuff with circuits and different things like that. You want to make sure that you're continuously building your work capacity to make sure that you can hit the warm-up and then go work out. On the other side, when you're thinking about a good warm-up, you want to take a step back and think about, well, what am I doing in the workout? Okay, what joints are involved, what muscle groups are involved, and can we get to the right positions? So when we look at a warm-up, we have a really important structure that we follow for a warm-up. First thing you want to come in and do is some soft tissue work. Now, the thing that we want to think about with soft tissue is it's transient. And transient means it's not lasting. We know that what soft tissue work does, pressure on the fascia, pressure on the muscles, it provides a neurological downregulation, like a relaxing effect. Here's why that's important. When you're downregulating in your chronically toned muscle groups, the key is you're creating this window of trainability. Okay, so when we use that soft tissue work, we know that we're not breaking up scar tissue. We're not, changing the architecture of the soft tissue. We're providing a relaxing effect, because what we want to do is relax the soft tissue and muscle groups around certain joints so that we can get into better positions. We can move through greater ranges of motion. That's the key. So we're creating this window of trainability in the workout so that when we get under load, we can get better technique. That's it. Once we're done with the soft tissue, we want to start opening up joints that are tight. So typical, going back to Yanda's upper and lower cross syndrome, what's tight? Well, ankles are always tight, hips are always tight, core is always weak, and the upper back is always weak. And shoulders are tight. So what we want to do is start mobilizing on an isolated level what joints are really tight and restricted. So we might do some shoulder mobility, hip mobility, and ankle mobility if we're looking at it from a full body perspective. Then we look at, in isolation, what needs to be upregulated or what needs to be activated. Mid back is always weak, core is always downregulated, glutes are always weak. So those types of things we want to focus on for the activation. Then once we get the joints in isolation, either mobilized or muscle groups activated around those joints, we want to fire up the core. Now, here's the key with the core. From sitting all the time, texting, our society is always sitting down. We get up, we sit down and eat breakfast, we get in the car, we sit down to commute, then we sit at our desk all day.
We sit to do podcasts.
And then we get into the gym. We expect to have great posture and great form. That's not going to happen. The negative ramifications of us sitting all day is we lose that connection from the shoulders to the hips. So in every warm-up, it's essential, it's critical to fire up that core in a good position. Good position would be a straight, from the head, spine, and the hips. So plank variations, side planks. Another great one that fires up the core but gets the extremities moving or crawling patterns. Those types of things are really critical to get the core fired up in a warm-up. Okay, so now we went from soft tissue, we went from isolated mobility and activation, then we fired up the core. Now we're starting to look at integration. Integrated movements like fundamental movement patterns, lunges, push-ups, hinging, squats, all those things. Now we're starting to sequence things, sequence movements to ensure that, hey, we're watching. As a coach, I'm always assessing from multiple angles. I'm really seeing what's going on. When they perform these fundamental movements, these sequence movements where the joints and the muscles are working in sequence, can they hit good range of motion and maintain position? Remember, we said there's two positions, starting and ending. And that's what we're always looking at. After that, we're starting to fire up the CNS, okay? We got them integrated movements. Now we're starting to excite the CNS. Med balls, throws, jumps, sprints, prowler sprints, all those different things. We're getting fired up for the workout. Finally, before we start the workout, now we're almost there, okay? We got this warm-up.
You just want to lift some weight, damn it.
We'll talk about this here in a minute, but we're finally there. We're finally ready. So whatever our primary movement for the workout is, we're going to rehearse it. That's it, okay? So we say if you're going to squat, maybe 20 squats with the barbell. If you're going to bench, 20 reps with the barbell. If you're going to deadlift, maybe 10, 20 hip hinge movements with the barbell. We're just rehearsing whatever the primary movement is for the workout. Then we start the workout. So you can see, if you do it right, the warm-up is very sophisticated. But if you know what you're doing, it's very logical why you're doing it in that sequence. And you can see why a comprehensive warm-up would require such good work capacity. But you got to be working towards that. Now, as a younger man, as a younger, lifter going into the gym, my warm-ups were terrible. I would, stretch, just move my arms.
A couple
of these.
My pre-workout, I'll be good.
And then start benching. But that doesn't work forever. And as you get older, you're going to see, you wish that you would have had better warm-ups when you first started out. I'm 44 now, so my warm-ups actually take up even more time than probably what you're used to. My warm-up might extend 15, 20 minutes, okay, before I get into the workout, because I'm trying to unlock my body and undo temporarily through that trainability window all the negative things that I've done. I've hurt my, shoulder. Yeah. I've hurt my low back, my knees. Like I have a bad knee, ankles are tight and restricted. So I'm trying to ensure that when I get under the weight, I'm at my best or my optimal. Okay, so those quick little warm-ups don't work forever. And if you're a coach, like I said, it all goes back to ensuring that you're providing a training effect for your athletes, but you're not going to injure them. And the other thing is there's a piece of teaching. You want to make sure that you're teaching them when they're not with you how to do it the right way, and you're giving them the opportunity to integrate fitness into their life for the rest, of their lives. That's the key. You want to give them that love of fitness because it's so important for longevity and how you move and just how you feel like as you get older. So
yeah, I will say, as I've done a lot of the DeFranco workouts, and I've worked here with the DeFranco's team at the Onnit Academy, one of the greatest things is, like as you mentioned, was before loading up the barbells for a bench press, for a squat, for all those things, just do it with the barbell.
Yeah.
And my form improved so much. And like before you loaded the weight up there, like you get the form down first.
Yeah.
And that has helped so much. And, being able to push more weight. And I attribute a lot of that to just form. Like, I have gotten stronger, but I think just getting the correct form has improved my weight numbers alone on its own.
Yeah. Well, they call that, there's a technique behind that. Pavel Tsatsouline calls that greasing the groove. So basically, if it's important to you, you should do it more often. Okay. So if you're trying to work on your deadlift pattern, you should be grooving that hinge pattern throughout the day. Like, so the common example is if someone's trying to do more pull-ups. Well, instead of trying to go and do 3 to 4 sets of 8 to 10, what I want you to do is do 3 to 4 pull-ups 10 times a day. So you're getting more volume in throughout the day. And guess what? Because of the rests and the breaks and stuff, you're getting quality repetitions.
Yeah.
Okay. So that greasing the groove of just, if you want to get better at a certain technique, you got to do it over and over. Now, your technique will be slightly different than mine, but there are principles. There's principles that you have to follow. You have to move through a range of motion. You have to do so with control, and you have to achieve the functional position starting and ending for every single different exercise.
Yeah. Okay, so getting into a little more science of strength, what is happening in the muscles? Because, you can go from, being able to lift X number to lifting X number 16 weeks later. You may not necessarily look bigger, but your muscles can hold so much more capacity, push so much more capacity. What happens in those weeks to your muscles scientifically that makes them able to do that? Because that just boggles my mind, man, more than anything.
Well, you're just strengthening the myofibrils in the muscle where there's two types of hypertrophy. One is increasing the cross-sectional area of the muscle, and that's typically done with more volume work at a moderate intensity. That's called sarcoplasmic hypertrophy. And there's myofibrillar hypertrophy where you're really increasing the contractile proteins within the muscle. So to do that, there has to be progression. So when you start a program, you have the potential to load the exercise with a certain weight. As you start increasing the contractile properties of that muscle, your potential increases. And that's basically what's happening. You're increasing the potential of your muscles to contract harder through that whatever exercise you're performing. So,
okay, cool. And another thing I've always heard is when you're trying to put on size, you're trying to push more muscle. How does doing heavy cardio affect those things? 'Cause I've heard it could be a detriment.
Yeah. Well, I mean,
do you have to choose one or the other?
Well, you got to think about your potential for training. So you have a certain capacity to train. They typically say there's a bowl, and if you fill that bowl with water, some water is from training, some water is from cardio, some water is from the recovery sessions that you have. So as you fill that bowl with more and more water, you're actually filling up your potential for training in a specific training week, a training block, those types of things. So training all comes down to the stimulus and adaptation. So I can only train as hard as I can recover. So if I'm training too much or I'm filling the cup too much or too quickly, I'm not going to be able to recover and can sustain my trainability throughout a certain time period. So if you're adding in heavy cardio or even low intensity cardio, aerobic capacity training, anything like that, you have to take something away. Okay, so if I put something in and it's, I'm filling it too much, then I have to take something away. But if your training program is not really intense, then you could add in more resisted cardio. We like putting in resisted circuits as opposed to, just kind of walking forever on the treadmill or anything like that. That does have its place of building your aerobic capacity and creating an aerobic foundation. But when you're trying to get more bang for your buck, resisted cardio like prowlers and bodyweight circuits and dumbbell circuits and those types of things, you can get a lot done in a shorter amount of time.
Okay.
Yeah.
Right on. So if somebody is not training to be an athlete in a particular sport and they just want to be healthy, in good shape, what's the right kind of balance they should look for? I mean, should strength training be something for everybody?
Yeah. Well, I think strength means different things to different people. So you have in the community, you have powerlifters who love 1 rep maxes on bench, squat, deadlift. You have CrossFitters. You have guys who love bodyweight training, calisthenics. You have kettlebell guys. You have, all different training modalities, people kind of migrate towards. So my idea of fitness might not be your idea of fitness. I know that you kind of pick and go through different programs and stuff to see what you like. And it's like that for a lot of different people. So I'm not going to come in and say, well, I want you to do this program. I want to hear from you and figure out what you like to do, So as a coach, those types of questions are really important, especially if someone's coming to you and trying to start integrating fitness into their lifestyle. Okay, the one thing I want to prioritize when I'm talking to you is I want to make sure it doesn't create a detriment in your life. So if you have a certain lifestyle and you come in and I start training you very intensely and you're sore and you can't move and it's really affecting your overall life outside the gym, then maybe I have to adjust the program or really get more feedback from you to build a program that's sustainable for you. Because my goal is longevity. I want to make sure that, again, fitness becomes part of your life for the long term. So I'm not coming in to try to force my ideas on you. I'm really listening to your feedback to give me ideas on the program of how I can structure it and make it something that you want to do.
Cool. Yeah. So one thing that I've learned over the last year, and it's probably something that's been around for many years, the use of bands, use of, for people who don't know exactly what I'm talking about, they're like giant rubber bands.
Yeah.
And they have different levels of resistance based on the type of band. I see that in added to a lot of the DeFranco stuff.
What's happening?
What's happening there? Why are they so cool? I mean, it's a lot harder.
Yeah.
You see people doing curls with bands or iron crosses, just static holds.
Yeah.
It's a lot harder than you would think.
Yeah. Well, it's just another training tool, so there's endless ways to use bands. You could use them, as elastic resistance for exercises like band pull-aparts. Something I wrote about in 2004 in my Chaos manual was dynamic stabilization. So that's where you're actually hanging them from the bar. We were talking about this earlier, where you're doing, they call it bamboo bench press. It was created actually by Louis Simmons. Back in the day, well, let's take a step back, one more step back. Dick Hartzell was actually the guy that kind of popularized using, they call them continuous loop elastic bands in powerlifting. And he kind of connected with Louis Simmons, and Louis started using them for his dynamic effort and max effort work and all those different things. So the idea is a lot of things are happening with the bands. So if you hook a band around the bar and you anchor it below, what happens is it kind of mimics the athlete's strength curve. So what that means is as the athlete gets stronger and their leverages improves, the joint angle opens up, the resistance of the band increases. When they're at their weakest and the joint angle closes, like let's say they're sitting on a box, the elastic resistance is less. So as they stand up, it increases. As they sit down, it lessens. So it matches their natural strength curve. So what Louis also found out was this term called overspeed eccentric. So when athletes are squatting against resistance of bands, it actually throws them down faster, mimicking more of a reactive strength movement. So that was one of the epiphanies that came out of Westside, where the use of bands with powerlifting, they were seeing these huge strength gains when they went to a powerlifting meet. What happened after that was taking those bands away from in addition to what was happening in the powerlifting community, and using them in the weight room as resistance. So band pull-aparts, curling against bands, mobility drills, like using the bands became a way to sort of get the task done that you want in a sort of different way. So it's the difference of using kettlebells versus barbells, using sandbags, med balls. It's just another training tool. Now, when you're using it for the bamboo bench press, like you said, that's more of dynamic stabilization. So what Louis found, he had a bamboo bar, which was it was a non-rigid bar. And in addition, he hung the bands over top of it. He didn't stretch them. He just hung them over and hung weights from them. And what he found was he had, from years and years of lifting, he had shoulder issues when he bench pressed. And he found that dynamic stabilization when he did the bench press allowed the muscles to contract very rapidly, because you're sort of trying to maintain a good bar path, overcoming that vibration, that vibrational effect.
It'll humble you quickly.
It will humble you quickly, but the cool thing is it will rehab you just as quickly. It's so amazing to get your muscles to fire so rapidly through that movement pattern. So when I wrote the Chaos Manual, I took this idea of dynamic stabilization and I applied it to training athletes in the same way that Louis did for powerlifting. But yeah, that's kind of what's happening. The elastic bands, you're only limited by your imagination. There are so many ways. We use bands in every workout in some way. Like I said, we could use them for mobility drills, like band dislocates, and then we could use it for an activation drill, like band pull-aparts. We could use them on the bench to keep the guy from slipping around when he's bench pressing. Put it on band-resisted squats to dynamic stabilization. There's just so many different uses of bands.
Yeah, I feel like that should be in every gym.
Absolutely.
It's one of those things I didn't see till I started working out here.
Yeah.
I never saw anywhere.
Yeah, you don't see them in commercial gyms that much, but I think with the introduction, like Perform Better carries them, Elite carries them, Rogue carries them. They're becoming more and more mainstream. But yeah, I have probably 20 different bands in my bag right now. So.
Yeah. So pardon my ignorance on this question.
Sure.
Not a strength coach or anything like that. But this is just something that I always wondered. Is it different types of strength? Like, is it in the muscles scientifically? Is something different for? How do I explain this? I guess, is it one in the same? Your strength and pull strength versus a static hold strength. Like, if you increase one, is the other automatically increased, or are they completely two different things?
When you're developing a strength quality, specificity is the key. So isometric strength versus strength through a movement pattern, they're a little different, but they're all part of the same foundation. So if you're thinking about isometric strength, there's overcoming isometrics, there's yielding isometrics, but the thing you want to think about is it's specific to the position. Okay, so if you have a range of motion and you're doing an isometric at a certain position, you're strengthening that position, okay, specifically for a maximal muscular contraction. By definition, isometric strength is sort of the peak strength that you can perform because you're not moving anywhere. You're just everything you got into a static hold. When you're talking about like strength training, like absolute strength, that's when you start talking about ranges of motion. Moving through a range of motion, your all-out best effort for one rep for a particular exercise. So because there's movement involved, you're not at the maximal muscular, contraction, So they are different, and the thing that you want to think about for strength is specific, just like all strength training. Now, when you're developing strength, it doesn't matter if you're using a kettlebell, a barbell, a sandbag. Your body doesn't know the difference. All it knows is tension, load, and when you perform an exercise, where you're moving it from point A to point B. But as far as the different tools, it doesn't matter. Your body only understands tension.
Yeah. Is that the same thing as it goes to, you'll have, just regular reps, like a regular bench up and down rep versus like a slow lower type of thing?
Yeah, that's a little different. So that's when we start getting into tempo. So tempo is basically, excuse me, the duration of each phase of a repetition. So if you're driving the bar to lockout, that's the concentric phase. So that's one phase. If you're lowering the bar to your chest, we're talking about bench press here, but if you're lowering the bar to your chest, that's the eccentric phase. Now, the small duration of time between those two phases is called the amortization phase. That's basically like an isometric, a very brief isometric phase between. So eccentric lowering, the isometric amortization, and the concentric, the drive phase, is a concentric. So when you start talking about lowering slowly, you're increasing the duration of the eccentric phase. So there's a lot of awesome things that happen when you slow down each phase of a repetition. When you're slowing down the eccentric phase, you're really building control and stability through that range of motion. And you're also, they found, Brad Schoenfeld has found, like the eccentric microtrauma is increased through controlled and slow tempoed eccentrics. So that's one of the best ways if you're looking to put on muscle, slowing down that eccentric phase for each repetition or building that into a logical program will really increase your muscle mass. But yeah, so just think when you're talking about tempo or you're talking about training effect, modifying the duration of each phase of a repetition has different things that happen, have different outcomes or training effects.
Cool. So if somebody is looking to, maybe they haven't done much strength training or they don't feel like they're making any progress, what's the number one tip you can give them to find that avenue?
The number one tip if they're not making progress, it could be a whole host. Get more sleep.
Give up.
No, never give up. Never, ever give up. Check your sleep. Check your nutrition. Check your technique. Are you putting everything you've got into the program you're on? That you're on, because a lot of people think, well, I'm not getting where I want to go fast enough, so let me change the training program that I'm on, without giving that training program everything they've got. You know what I'm saying? Yeah. So if they're not following the warm up and they're skipping sets or
boozing the night before,
yeah, so, man, that workout was terrible. Well, how much sleep did you get? Well, I stayed up till 3. Well, what'd you eat for breakfast? I didn't eat breakfast. Different things like that. You begin to put the puzzle pieces together. So I think if they're not making progress, there's no simple answer. You really have to take a look at.
Doesn't necessarily mean it's the problem in the gym. It could be other areas.
Well, think about it. They're an hour in the gym. They're 23 hours outside screwing everything up.
Good point.
Right. So getting a hold of that 23 hours can really facilitate your training progress, and everything that you're doing in the gym can really enhance that. So
Okay. Well, since you mentioned nutrition, what are some of the philosophies you follow? Some of the the things you like to put on your athletes?
Yeah. Well, it's hard for me to control their nutrition, so I just kind of control the things that I can. So I talk to them about, we can talk about Onnit products, but I talk to them about good supplementation. So one of the things I do is make sure that they're drinking lots of water, hopefully with Himalayan pink salt in it. And one of the things I like to do is kind of drive more alkalinity in their bodies. So I have squeezed lemon in their water with the Himalayan pink salt.
A little bit of honey?
A little bit. Well, that's your choice, but I like it kind of tart. But those types of things, Shroom Tech Sport, we like to supplement with. Lots of sleep. As far as nutrition-wise, good quality protein, stay away from the junk food, different things like that. I'm starting to supplement more with magnesium and different things like that, just because I'm a little older and just finding what works for me. Curcumin, fish oils, different things like that. But that's on my program, and I try to instill, looking into that. A lot of the athletes I train are in a high school level, so I can't really recommend supplements to them, but I talk to their parents about it and let them know some of the things that are working. And, but Onnit products are all natural, so getting them to understand that they're not like other supplement companies where you can't really tell what's in them.
Yeah.
Take a look at the website. Everything's listed there. It's all natural.
There's
So
not a stimulant in
there's
everything
no
to make you
stimulant,
think you're getting
right?
more than you're actually getting.
Yeah. The thing that really has helped my athletes is, like I said, alkalinity. I talk to them about apple cider vinegar. I try to have them supplement with it. A lot of them.
What's that all about? I don't
Yeah.
know anything about the apple cider vinegar thing.
Well, from what I understand, apple cider vinegar is like a miracle like a liquid. It's like it has so many benefits from aids in digestion, driving more alkalinity.
So not regular vinegar. It has to be
apple cider vinegar.
Okay.
Yeah. So I use it. I take a shot of that every morning. Take a shot of that every night. You can actually kind of make it more palatable with lemon juice. So I squeeze lemon in there. There's also a salt soul solution where you can have super saturated Himalayan pink salt and water, and you can put a shot of that in there. That's from Mike DeSanti. He's I call it the DeSanti shot. It's basically half a squeezed lemon, a shot of apple cider vinegar, and then a big tablespoon of this salt. Basically what you do is you take a mason jar and you fill it with the Onnit Himalayan pink salt up an inch in the bottle, and then you fill the rest with water. You let that set for 24 hours, and what happens is the water becomes super saturated with the sodium. And
that sounds like a prank I used to play on my brother. We want me to make him drink the salt water.
Right. But you take that and you put all three of those things together, and it's like this super shot of alkalinity. Like talking about cancer and longevity, driving more alkalinity in the body with what you supplement, and also like deeper breathing patterns. We talk about a lot of diaphragmatic breathing, how that resets your nervous system in our CPPS certification. Introducing those things with our athletes, what happens is they start to move better. I've seen it with myself, but also with them, driving a lower sympathetic tone with deeper breathing, and breathing well will help improve the alkalinity of your body, in addition to, supplementing with apple cider vinegar, lemon juice, and those things like that. So,
okay, so I'm like really interested now. Like, so are you drinking that whole jar of the salt, or are you just taking a part of it?
No.
Okay. I'm like, are you drinking a whole
No, you take a
jar
tablespoon.
Salt water?
Tablespoon.
Like, are you just shitting massively after that?
No. It's actually, you kind of ease into it. So if you feel, it doesn't taste that great, but you get used to it.
Okay.
So you take a tablespoon of the salt soul, a tablespoon of the apple cider vinegar, and then half a squeezed lemon.
Okay, so that mixture you left in the jar, you take a tablespoon of that.
Tablespoon,
and then you mix it with a tablespoon of apple cider vinegar, just shoot it.
Just shoot it.
Okay.
Yeah, and I chase it with water, obviously, but you kind of get used to it. But I felt...
Morning and night?
Morning and night,
okay.
yeah.
If you're going to play like a game or something or do something, should you take it again, or do you just do morning and night?
I typically, before like pre-workout or like pre-game, I tell my guys lemon water and Himalayan pink salt, a pinch of Himalayan pink salt in a blender bottle, and then I have them sweeten it with Mio or something like that, just for flavor. But yeah, just like a very simple Gatorade solution, with electrolytes.
Yeah,
but it's more natural. So.
Yeah, I've heard that a lot from Joe D to Mike Dolce to everybody. Like, stay away from the Gatorade. Instead, just do some Himalayan salt, some water, and if you want a little sweetness, you put a little honey in.
Yeah, just put a little in there, and they're good to go.
So you have a bunch of programs that you made. Where can people find those? And tell us a little about your programs. Actually, you're here for the CPPS training. Tell us a little about that as well.
So Joe D and I are coming in to Onnit Academy this weekend. We're doing our CPPS certification. If you want more information around our certification, it's at C as in certified PPScoaches.com. And basically, it's our protocol that we put together that we wish we had as a young coach, when we first started out. There's a lot of certifying bodies right now for strength trainers, lifters, coaches, all those things. And unfortunately, their curriculum is based around, a reference or a book, What we wanted to do was create a certification that was more applicable, hands-on, something where you went to the weekend course and you learned how to be a better coach. Now, I've heard it from 100% of the coaches that have come through. When they leave on Sunday, they feel more confident. They have a complete system for training anybody, and they just feel like a better coach. And that's what we wanted. We didn't want this thing where, you read a book and just took a test and then you're certified. It's more applicable. It's something that the whole training system has been proven. I've used it, and every day I'm tweaking it, making it better. We talked about the warm-up. Remember how we went through every step? That's something we developed specifically for our CPPS system, that stepwise progression, because here's what you have to understand. When you're applying a technique or applying a system, you need a template. Okay, those templates are everything because it gives you repeatability, but we're not so arrogant to think that the template is set in stone. We're always tweaking, always learning. Every time I go to a seminar, a conference, or a clinic, I'm always trying to learn. I'm myself, this CPPS certification is not static. Every time we do it, it's better, it's different, it has more pieces to it, it's more integrated, more complex. It covers all the bases. Okay, so basically what we do when they come in, the 2-day certification, you can see all this stuff on the website, cppscoaches.com. But we talk about breathing fundamentals, fundamental movement, power, speed, program design, like everything that you ever want to know, the warm-up, all those different things that go into training someone. And we've had coaches, trainers, lifters, everybody take the certification. There's no prerequisites. But what happens is when you sign up, we send you all of our DVDs, all of our manuals that we've done over the last 10 years. And you can look at deeper dive into each one of these aspects of the certification. Okay, so we want to make sure you have the full curriculum, and you come and we teach you how to apply everything.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, what's your social media handles? Where can people look you up? And
so,
websites, all that
main website is Diesel SC is in strength conditioning. DieselSC.com. Twitter is Diesel Strength, and on Instagram it's Smitty Diesel.
Cool. Well, thanks so much.
Orlando,
I feel like I've learned so much, man. And I'm gonna go buy a bunch of apple cider vinegar and mix up a bunch of salt water.
Well, if you guys have any questions, hit me up on the site. I'll do a whole video for you guys and send it to you. So whatever you need.
Yeah, that'd be awesome. Well, thanks so much. Hope you have a great weekend here in Austin. And
thank you.
Look him up. Find him on Twitter. He has some great books on his website that talk a lot about the things that we talked about today. So check those out. And head to Anna.com for all your nutritional needs, of course.
Absolutely.
And until next time.
Thank you.
Take it easy.